is a very important
I
thing.
understand.
So here's the situation. The rules and procedures are dictated to determine what the rules of the Senate are,
Yes.
not what the rules of those sitting committees are. So whatever it says in the sitting committees, that's what the sitting committees must abide by when they meet. That doesn't mean that you can change the rules and procedures within a committee.
So what alternatives do you have?
Well,
An alternative I would suggest is to consider asking people of these interests to move quickly for deliberations to move quicker. And I will tell you, Raj and I have walked through 70 out of
Oh, I know. I read through all of them.
So
You guys were.
we can work to move quicker if that will help, but I do think we have serious legal inconsistency if we were to move to change those rules, especially as Robert, as I've already said, or as the members did. Robert's rules clearly dictates that you can't make rules and to change the rules that your parent assembly created for you. And there's nothing in the rules and procedures that allows you to suspend a rule in committee.
Are you two amenable to?
We're amenable
speeding up a little
to
bit?
trying to speed up, absolutely, but I just think it's extremely irresponsible to change these rules without, it's illegal, it's opening up doors for potential Supreme Court cases.
Or, the committee would not be allowed to limit or extend debate under the rules that I mentioned previously. So I move to withdraw that previous objection and ask for, a motion to remove that motion, I guess.
Any objections at this time? Facing none, the motion passes. It has been withdrawn. Are there any other motions at this time?
I move to begin consideration on, All right, okay, so, seeing as there are a lot of 700 code revisions throughout, these 133 bills, I wish to refer them to the Replacement and Agenda Committee, where they can be tabled until they're amended to go into effect at the summer A election or later, as they're too close to the spring election to pass on the floor, according to the UF Constitution, I believe. So I will list those out if needed. If not, I'll list out the 700 code legislation.
Okay. Are there any objections at this time? Seeing none, the motion passes. Those bills have been referred to.
I have to list them out first.
Point of information.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why can't you just ask to amend it so that it will pass but be in effect for the next summer election?
We can do that. I need to go back through. I think that it would be helpful to have time to review because there are a lot of bills for these 700 codes. I think tabling it either to our own committee, because we can table it to amend the proviso, or we could table it, we could refer it to the Replacement Agenda Committee, would be a little bit more prudent because there's a lot of them and they cannot go into effect. So I would argue that there are other bills at this time that should take precedence today. But I do think that these are good bills that should be heard. So are you amenable to tabling them to amend the proviso at a later date?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I agree they should be passed, the majority of them. However, I do think, considering the extenuating circumstances, it would be prudent to hear them later.
All right.
Okay. All right, so I would like to remake my previous motion. Refer to us first. I move to remake my motion to, instead of referring these bills to the Replacement and Agenda Committee, to table them to the Judiciary Committee, to amend the provisos that state when the bills go into effect, by unanimous consent.
Okay, are there any objections at this time? Seeing none, the motion passes. We have now been referred to the Judiciary Committee on the table.
All right, is it, point of information, may I refer this to the parliamentarian?
Yes.
Do I have to list out all of the individual bills that refer to the 700 codes by number?
No. I mean, everyone, like the Senate is already aware of the 700 codes that's being considered, so since you were broad, it's fine.
All right. informed that they are not in fact allowed by Robert's rules and rules of procedure. So that's already removed in my belief.
Correct.
Okay.
But there is another alternative.
We're not, I do not wish to make another motion at this time. I would like to make a motion, however, to refer all 800 code revisions that have been sent to the Judiciary Committee to the Budget Committee, as that's where they should have been initially in the first place.
Budget chair was added onto the email chain, they should have just taken the codes out.
That's good, yeah, that's understandable, but
Would you like to make that motion?
yes, I move to refer all 800 code legislation to the Budget Committee by unanimous consent.
Okay, are there any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. Given that, we are now going to move into Student Senate Bill 2024-1000, the Supreme Court Syllabus Act Orange Codes Revision, authored by Senator Rajmi and sponsored by everyone. You now have, I believe, 5 minutes of presentation, and whenever you're ready.
All right, so this is a prior bill that was submitted, but due to timing constraints and whatnot, we couldn't hear 2 readings of it and get it passed. It was originally authored by Christian Rodriguez. In reading the proviso, it gives him some credit for it. The goal of this bill is to create a syllabus for Supreme Court and a mechanism to do so. So there's like a summary of TLDR, if you will, of certain cases that have been submitted. Any confidential information will be redacted as well. Any draft decision will be sent to Supreme Court for any edits before publication. That's 405.4. This bill was headed up by Christian Rodriguez, and he had spoken to the Chief Justice prior to that before she resigned about the bill. They seemed very receptive and in fact liked the bill. So it was really just time constraints what prevented this from passing in the previous term. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's supposed to just give people a summary. The judicial branch is one of the 3 branches that we have here on campus, and it's probably one of the most secretive ones, and this just allows it to be more transparent and for everyone to be able to know what's going on. Yeah, if you have any questions about the bill specifically, please ask. I'm going to give the remainder of my presentation time.
We're now going to move into 5 minutes of Q&A. Whenever you guys are ready.
All right.
Does anyone have any questions?
I do, give me one second.
Is there anything that you want to change?
No, not in particular. The bill as written was reviewed by both Christian Rodriguez on off the bill, and he spoke to the Supreme Court justices previously about it, and they were very receptive over it. So I think the bills are written as it's written now. Pretty good.
So I know in the UF Constitution, Article 5, Section 2B, it states that the judicial branch and Supreme Court shall have autonomy over their internal proceedings. So I wonder what your thoughts are on that, especially related to Section 405.2, where the Chief Justice may appoint a decisions responsible for drafting a syllabus, as well as 405.6. Yeah, so I was wondering what your thoughts are relating to that particular part of the Constitution, just how this fits in with their autonomy over.
I'm sorry, that question was a little bit all.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was trying to get my thoughts together.
Could you?
Oh yeah. So I will re-ask the question. So as it states in the UF Constitution, Article 5, Section 2B, it states that the judicial branch and the Supreme Court have autonomy over the internal proceedings of the court. So I wonder what your thoughts are on the sections I mentioned earlier relating to whether or not you believe that may overstep into their autonomy over the internal proceedings.
Yeah, so in fact there's a lot of mentions in our codes and whatnot about that lays out the procedures and both positions for both the executive branch, judicial branch, and the Senate. Ultimately, for example, the Senate Executive Committee is a code statute that both mandates action from both the executive and legislative branches, despite the fact that they are independent of each other. You'll see multiple instances in our codes of this. It doesn't mandate necessarily that you must do it in a certain way. This bill lays out a certain level of autonomy while establishing a position under that branch. This doesn't in any way, shape, or form mandate that it must happen in a certain way in every single instance and override any of the judicial's autonomy. This simply lays out that there's a new position and there is a rudimentary structure for it. Many of our codes also outline the Elections Commission and I believe other parts of the judicial branch is mandated as code, how those procedures work. So I don't think this code would be any different from what we have already on the books. It maintains the autonomy as written in the Constitution, and it doesn't override any of the Supreme Court's autonomy to write their own bylaws, which they can by a majority vote. This just adds a structure to it that they have to incorporate, and that's no different from us creating a new executive department that's independent from the Senate that we have already on the books. So I don't see how this will be out there. Additionally, the Supreme Court justices had previously really liked this idea, so even them, they saw it as fine. So yeah.
One more quick question.
Yeah.
How much time is left?
1 minute.
All right. So I do see that in 405.2, this is just a grammatical question. The Chief Justice may appoint a clerk of decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout this bill, is there any definitive requirement for this civil by created, or is it just up to the court to determine if it is necessary?
Yeah, so when it comes to, opinion is written at, okay, let me start with 405.2 may, so yeah, depending on one's interpretation, they don't necessarily have to appoint someone. If you would rather have it as a must, you can always amend it to that, but it is optional. As for what the syllabus will definitively state and how it is written, that's going to be up to the autonomy of the Supreme Court. And many court systems around the nation and state level, when they're writing syllabus or opinions, it's really up to the court's opinion and jurisdiction on how it will be disseminated and what fashion it will be. I mean, just as you said earlier, autonomy ultimately should rest in the court, and this would allow for that to be done.
All right, we're now going to, given that there's only 8 more seconds left of debate, I'm now going to move on to 5 minutes of debate. So whenever you guys are ready.
I don't think this is like a bad bill, but if you just look at the wording, it doesn't actually really do anything. Because everything is just kind of like, they may appoint. If it's created, then it shall be sent. But then it doesn't mandate them to do anything. I just almost feel like, what's even the point of passing this bill? It's not actually going to, in effect, do anything at all.
Point of information, Mayor, for this to Senator Washington.
Yes.
Does the Supreme Court already have the authority to create a syllabi? Like
There's nothing outlining that they can or cannot do.
Okay, so is it not presumed that they can do this
It's
currently?
not.
Have
Can I?
Yes.
Okay. So like the reason is that they can't necessarily manifest a new position in the courts. Similar how for the Elections Commission, the Supreme Court can't manifest the Elections Commission. We have to outline that by statute. So they cannot create this position out of thin air via the rules and procedures. So there has to be some legislative mechanism to allow them to even do this. They can't just simply will it into existence.
Follow? Have they done this in the past?
Have they done this?
Have they created a simplification of their opinions to be posted anywhere?
They have posted, I believe, their opinions on the SG website. That's as much as I know.
Okay.
You can look at it. It's currently on the SG website right now if you want to look at their
Yeah.
opinions, but that's in
the-
full text if you want to read those.
All I ask is that if you do have questions, please keep that within the Q&A period. Does anyone have anything to say?
I think after the statement from Senator Mia, I now better understand the purpose of the bill.
All right, anybody else, anything else to add?
I think the syllabus could be really helpful for, I think a lot of people may not like understand or they're not in it, they don't really know much about SG in general, especially like the Supreme Court. I didn't know what that was until I joined Senate. So I think the syllabus could like set like a good baseline for anyone in the student body to learn more about it.
Yeah, I agree that it's a good idea. I think as Senator Mia mentioned in Q&A, I'm assuming it is constitutional, it may be beneficial to change the wording from may to must, for, if that's not overstepping the bounds of the legislative body on the judicial branch.
I contend that would be an overstep. I think may is the better word. I would, however, like to speak to members of the Supreme Court, myself and others, to ask them if they believe that this has already been well established under their authorities. I think this is a great bill. I think this is establishing something that would help the student body. However, I do want to make sure that this already isn't well established by the court, and I would like to get my own opinion. I think that this is reasonable and it would help the students, especially understanding the briefs and the opinions because they are complex. But in my opinion, if it could be accomplished to speak with members of the Supreme Court and determine if this has been established as something that's under their authority, whether or not they could do this without it being codified. But I do like the bill, but I'm going to recommend that it be tabled for further discussion with members of the Supreme Court.
I would just disagree, just because this isn't requiring them per se to create a Supreme Court syllabus, it's more giving them the legislative backing to do so if they wanted to. So it's not like we're imposing for them to do it. I think it's not a bad bill to pass, should they decide to do it in the future.
I agree that it wouldn't be bad to pass. The only thing is once there's established precedent for this stuff, especially if they've already published any simplifications, that this just would not be fully necessary. That's why I do not believe this bill should fail, absolutely not, but I do believe it should be tabled for discussion with them. I think that the intent of the bill is good, but that this should be discussed further with members of the Supreme Court and other outside bodies to know if this has been well established in the past before we proceed on approving the bill.
Is there anybody else with anything? There's only 7 seconds left. I'm now going to move into 2 minutes of final privilege. Rajma, are you ready?
All right, so as for tabling this bill and seeing what the Supreme Court, talking to the Supreme Court, I don't see why we can't just pass this out of the committee and in the meantime have it go through first readings. We have both first and second readings for a reason, so that if something comes up in second readings, like, hey, we can do this, or if the opinion of the court changes, that we could just simply fail in second reading. That would kill the bill right then and there. It seems like there's a consensus that the bill is well written and it does fulfill its goal of being a legislative instrument to allow the Supreme Court to do this. If we pass out of committee today, we could have at least 2 weeks of leeway to really have this simmer in the Senate. I don't see why we should have a roadblock for this necessarily. I mean, this has already been brought up to the prior Chief Justice before her resignation and other justices, but this was initially thought of in summer. It's been the better part of 6 months. Nothing substantial has changed. So, I mean, I don't really agree with the idea of tabling it. I say let it come out of committee, talk to the justices as they stand now. If something has changed, we could fail in first reading or second readings, or just you could even veto it if something came up. I don't really see a reason why you should just let it die here. But yeah, that's all. I yield the remainder of my time.
Alright. Now that the final vote is completed, does anyone have any motions at this time?
I move to approve this piece of legislation by unanimous consent.
Any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. SSB 2024-1000, the Supreme Court Syllabus Act has now been approved. We're now going to move on to the next piece of legislation, which is SSB 2024-1001, Central Publications Act, 30 Codes Revision, authored again by Senator Rajmia. Yeah, we're going to go into 5 minutes of presentation whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so censures are a big thing for us as students. A censure, well, if you don't know already, is basically saying, is accusing someone of wrongdoing, specifically a senator or an SG official. For those who don't know, it gets posted on the SG website, so potentially if you look up someone's name and put a new up, the first thing you might see is the censure. That being said, if someone's found not guilty of a censure, it remains on the SG website, which kind of defeats the purpose of exoneration. So the aim of this bill is that if the bill got through committee, got to the floor, and it's posted on the SG website, and it was deliberated upon and found like they didn't do something wrong or anything, it should be taken off the website. It should still be able, for public records reason, because sunshine laws, for it to be accessible. And there's a provision laid out, I believe, at the end of the bill to allow for that. But it's simply taken off the SG website, so the first thing you look up when you look up someone's name isn't the attempted censure or the censure of X person. What's posted on the SG website is simply the text of the bill. It doesn't have any indication whether it passed or not, but if an employer is looking at that and looks up your name, puts in UF, that's probably something you don't want to have there. So the aim of this bill is to allow someone, like, if someone was accused of something, exonerated, that they don't have it against them. That was the goal of this bill. I yield the remainder of my time.
We're now going to move into 5 minutes of Q&A.
All right. I think this is phenomenal, but I've just one question that relates like to just kind of a semantic thing.
Yeah.
Why is it that they aren't posted after someone who was censured is found guilty?
They are posted. So
But why are they posted ahead of time?
Why are they?
Yes.
Oh, because so once a bill comes out of the committee, usually it is posted on SG website for public notice reasons.
Okay.
So I believe it's public notice so that when the Senate deliberates, that people can know ahead of time.
So that is required.
Uh,
Because I think this is great. I just wonder if it would be better to have it only go into effect after. I don't know if that's possible.
I'm not totally sure of the wording of that. I have to double check. I believe it's just posted on the SG website, both for senators' convenience and for the public's convenience. If I was to guess, I don't know, Ronan.
Oh, okay. So there's a requirement in the rules of procedures that bills must be posted on the website because the censure is a type of resolution. That's why it's posted on there. It's more a procedural thing and not like a pre-early shaming of someone.
Yeah. So it's because of that that's required. Because codes supersede RMP, this would just allow us to take it off the SU website if they're exonerated or whatnot. I feel like it's really good. Any other questions?
Anybody else have any other questions? And seeing none, we're now going to move into 5 minutes of debate whenever you guys are ready.
I think this is a great bill. I think this is necessary. I don't know why it already isn't like this, to be totally honest. So I think this is a phenomenal idea, and I intend to pass this bill.
Yeah, I agree, especially Senator Mia, you mentioned that when, you are applying for jobs and they look at, in your case, you don't want that. So I think it is a great idea to be able to.
All right, we're now going to move into 2 minutes of matter privilege. Whenever you're ready.
I yield.
All right, we're now going to move to motions. Anyone have any motions at this time?
I move to approve SSB 2024-1001 by unanimous consent.
Okay. Any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. SSB 2024-1001, central publication has been now been approved. We're now going to move on to the next piece of legislation, which is SSB 20.
All of it. There are a number of bills throughout the block that has been sent to the Judiciary Committee that say 2023. They were submitted last year first. So I would like to make a motion to create a block for everything and amend all of their the dates, the first line of every bill. So they say student space Senate space bill 2020 space 2024 dash XXXX, so that they all say 2024. So I move to amend. I move to suspend the rules and create a block of all of the legislation. First, yeah, that's my first motion.
Okay, are there any objections?
And a couple of those.
Seeing none, the motion passes.
All right, now I move to amend the first line of every bill previously mentioned to say student space Senate space bill space 2024 dash XXXX. By unanimous consent.
Are there any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. We're now going to move into Student Senate Bill 2024-1002, the Supreme Court Transmission Act, French Codes revision, authored again by Senator Raj. So whenever you're ready, you're moving to 5 minutes of presentation.
This bill, first to start off with, the numbering will be needed to amend if we pass this bill or not. It says 406.00 all the way down, so prospectively it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 if passed. So that's just my thing to bring up. The goal of this bill is more of like for the Supreme Court to have a judicial correspondent that transmits documents to the Florida Bar Association of like their rulings and opinions. I just thought it'd be a quirky idea for the Supreme Court to have, just to basically show off the Supreme Court and what they've been doing, and how they've been litigating stuff. These are law students after all, and they will be done to the bar, so it just shows them their judicial record. It also has the ability of holding them accountable, like they should be making absurd rulings, and if they send to the bar, they're definitely gonna know. So it just keeps, one shows off all the work they've done, but also it keeps them in check in a way. And also provides for FERPA guidelines to be followed. So for those who don't know, UFIDs are included on some submissions to the court, so those would be redacted when transmitting those. Yeah, that was the goal of this bill. I yield.
Okay, we'll do 5 minutes of Q&A whenever you guys are ready. Nope, okay, we're now gonna move into 5 minutes of debate whenever you guys are ready.
All right, so I agreed that SSB 2024-1000 was constitutional primarily because of the use of the word may within the bill. I think that's important to retain the autonomy of the internal proceedings of the court. So that's why I ended up voting yes for that bill. I think that this bill does the exact opposite. I think that all of the language within here is forceful and says like hereby mandated or shall fall, shall be. I think the language in this bill are more concrete than the other one, which I would argue breaches the principle of constitutionality from Article 5, Section 2B that gives the Supreme Court this autonomy. I do like the ending of this for the FERPA, and I would like to see that submitted again another time, but because of that breach in constitutionality, I do intend to fail this bill.
Comments from debate?
I just agree with Senator that it was like a mandating action by the judicial branch that I don't think we would cover.
Yeah, I think this would be a good idea, although I do think the language would have to be in the same structure as that of 2024-1000, where it authorizes them to have the authority to do this rather than mandating them to do so.
Point of information, would it be possible to simply amend the language prior to passing it, rather than tabling it? I'm not sure if that's possible.
Yeah, I'll remember that question too.
Yeah, so that is possible, although I think just because of how many instances within this bill, it might change the meaning of certain sections if we remove that language. So I would like to see it resubmitted by Senator Mia, where he can change it and make sure that the meaning is not altered through the removal and changing of these words.
Thank you.
We're now gonna move into 2 minutes of privilege. Ready?
Yeah, I mean, so when it comes to the language, it is definitely a different perspective in language, and it is more forceful. I mean, it can be amended in committee, but alternatively, we can have this bill tabled and I can withdraw it later instead of failing it, because failing it would not even allow me to resubmit it later, so tabling it might be a better move. But I mean, I get the concerns. I can go back to the drawing board if you guys would like me to do that. I just asked that if you guys want me to do that, don't fail it, because I literally couldn't resubmit a bill that would be similar in nature to this. Alternatively, it can be changed in committee today so that it can be passed later. That's up to y'all's prerogative. I think it'd be fairly minor changes personally, but I'll leave it up to y'all. I yield.
Point of information.
Yes.
Would it not, I don't think it would, can I refer this to the parliamentarian?
Yes.
So I know the substantially similar clause states that you can't resubmit legislation that is substantially similar to another piece that's previously been submitted. That's why failing it would allow the resubmission. Would changing the language from forceful language to something that authorizes that not be substantially different?
Well, in my understanding, it would have a different implication. In this case, I get the consensus that the committee feels like it is the implication of this bill that it's not really suited because of the forceful language. So if you changed that, I do think that you would be able to resubmit it.
So if you have any more for your presentations?
I
I mean, if that's the case, if you guys fail and you guys allow me to resubmit with a different language, then I'll be fine with that. Yeah, that's all, I guess. Thank you.
Can I move to motions? Are there any motions at this time?
I move to vote on SSB 2024 1002 by roll call vote.
Are there any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Yes. Okay. 1 second. Okay. Wang, or sorry, I'll go last. Brian,
Sorry, fail.
Rubai,
Fail.
Fung,
Table.
Henley, Badin,
Fail.
and Swasti,
Fail.
Prieto,
Fail.
Wang.
Seeing none, my vote doesn't change anything. I'm going to abstain.
All right. There are 6 fails, 1 table, 1 abstention.
Okay, with a vote of 6 to 0, I believe that bill is failed. We're now going to move into the next piece of legislation, which is SSB 2024-1004, Election Commission Accountability Act, or is it?
Point of order, that bill has been withdrawn.
Okay. So that bill has been withdrawn. We're now going to move to the next.
Yes, and Chair, if you wouldn't mind me pointing out, there is an ad hoc committee for rules and procedures that was specifically created to review rules and procedures amendments. I think that this committee should consider perhaps just how we referred the budgetary bills to the budget committee. I believe that it might be proper and efficient for the committee to consider sending the rules and procedures amendments to the rules and procedures committee.
Are there, okay, may I ask, point of information, so which bills, is this several bills that you're referring to?
There's a substantial amount of rules and procedures amendments, yes.
Okay,
Which bill?
so are you currently referring to 1004? Sure.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Are you referring to this specific bill, 1004, or are you referring to?
No, not 1004, apologies. But in the future, I do see things, for example, such as the 1006 and most of the.
1006 has been withdrawn.
Yes.
Okay, I see.
Yes.
It's still applicable for things like the bill number 1040, 1041, etc.
Would you be able to bring that point up around that?
Absolutely. I will take a list of the rules and procedures changes, and I'll let you know what those are.
That being said, again, we are going to move into SSB 2024-1000 Election Commission Accountability Act, Senator Co's revision, authored by Senator.
Point of order,
Yes.
we have already tabled all of the Senator Codes legislation. We should now be on SSB 2024-1008.
Thank you guys for all the information.
Point of information,
Yes.
why not 1007?
1007. Oh, okay, we can go to 1007.
Okay. 1007? Yeah. Yes.
Point of information, sorry. 1005, what happened to that one? Did we do that?
1005 is also Senator Codes.
Yes, so you're referring that to the
So,
applicant. Yes, I'm now going to, yes.
I believe, and parliamentary, correct me if I'm wrong,
I'm going to refer this question to the parliamentarian, given that, or would you like me to? Okay,
yeah,
strict.
that the correct motion to approve the bill or to fail it is a motion to approve it or motion to
Yeah.
fail it, not just to go into a vote on the bill.
I believe we already took the vote. I'm going to direct the question.
So, yes, so all of them have been approved by unanimous consent except for the last one, which you're right, I did call it to a vote. Would it be prudent for us to remake that motion to approve rather than to vote? Are we
Okay.
point of information, are we allowed to go back to a piece of legislation already approved and remake the motion to approve?
It's not been approved.
Oh, it failed, sorry.
Okay, I'm confused because I'm understanding that you said that the bill was already approved, so are we going back to?
It was failed.
So
Yes, but we made a motion to vote, not a motion to approve. So I'm not sure if that's procedurally correct.
Well, I feel like it's substantially the same thing, whether or not you say that you're calling a vote or if you're calling it a vote to approve, right? So
Yeah.
I don't see how it would really materially change anything.
if you really care about being procedurally accurate, I would suggest, I don't know if it's within my right to speak, but I would just suggest that if you voted to fail, which most people did, just make the motion to reconsider, and then go back, remake the motion to approve, and then all vote to fail, if that's what you choose to do.
Can I just give like the Spark Notes version of this? It's, you have to make a motion and then vote yes or no on the motion, not like make a motion, just have a vote and say fail.
Yeah, that's where I was confused.
Yeah, that's
Okay, yes.
Point of order.
Yes.
I'd like to move to reconsider the recently held vote on SSB 2024 1002, and reconsider that and instead make it a motion to approve by roll call vote. Well, motion to fail by roll call vote.
You have to motion to approve and then say no.
Fail,
Well, no.
yes or no.
Okay, point of information. If I make a motion to approve and we say no, is that considered a motion to fail?
No, so, okay, so you basically, when you voted on the motion, you said you failed. You
Yes.
voted to fail.
Yes.
So in order for you to make a motion to reconsider, it has to be that you plan to make a motion that is contrary to your previous vote, if I am correct. And so for that reason, you can still vote no, but you have to make the motion to approve the bill. So you can vote
Okay.
no on that motion, on your own motion, to approve.
Vote
Okay,
no
so-
to approve,
Right.
and
Means
if the
fail.
majority doesn't approve, then that fails. If you
Right.
vote- make a
Okay.
motion to
So
fail,
that couldn't
then
be
the
implied
majority
as being
votes no,
tabled or
then
suspended.
approve.
Automatically, it's the implication if you say no to approval, it has been failed.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so point of order, I move to reconsider the vote on SSB 2024 1002 by unanimous consent.
Any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes.
Okay, I move to approve SSB 2024 1002 by roll call vote.
Any objections? Seeing none. Okay, the motion's been approved. Clerk, if you could please take the roll.
Brian,
No.
Has to be no.
Okay.
Rubai,
No.
Fung,
No.
Henley, Badin,
No.
Insuasti,
No.
Prieto,
No.
Wang.
Seeing none, I vote in changing none, and abstaining from voting on that one. With a vote of
7 noes and 1 abstention, 0
seven noes,
yeses.
one abstention, that bill has been procedurally failed. Is that
It's been failed.
failed? Okay, thank you. Now we're now gonna move on to SSB 2024 1007, Hatch Act 200 Code Revision, authored by Senator Raj Meena, sponsored by Senator Angela Gongula. Senator Raj Meena, whenever you're ready, we're going to go to 5 minutes of presentation.
All right, so the Hatch Act, 200 Code Revisions. So the context for this bill is that in terms of the federal laws, we have 2 Hatch Acts, one that was passed in the 1880s, one that was passed in the late 1930s, that prevents certain members of the civil service and other parts of the executive branch from actively participating in campaigns to not unduly influence elections. So drawing on that is when I hatched the idea for the Hatch Act here, or helped to hatch the idea of the Hatch Act here, which simply says members of the executive branch can't use their undue influence to influence a political campaign. It's simply just to limit unfair treatment of the executive branch and other members of the government. For example, since executive secretaries, assistant treasurers, agency, and cabinet heads from putting their thumb on the scale in favor of one party or another. So being an active part of a political campaign and managing it, it's just so they're supposed to be neutral arbiters. And if they don't, if they decide to violate this, they would instead be subject to potential censure by the student body Senate. Obviously, that would be up to their jurisdiction or even impeachment, just like it's outlined in the codes. Yeah, it's a fairly straightforward bill. That's really where the idea of this bill stems from, is from the federal laws passed previously. Yeah. I yield.
Okay, we're now moving to 5 minutes of Q&A. If you guys are ready.
I just gotta ask one question, I guess. Should this not be 700 code revisions rather than 200 code revisions, as it is dealing with campaigning and elections?
This, well, I mean, though it does touch on it to an extent, it is inherently towards the executive branch, and so I felt better that it be under the chapter of the 200 codes. So that's why I have it labeled as 200 codes for that reason. Let me me double check real quick, yeah, for the executive branch, because most of the positions outlined in here are subject in the executive branch. Secretaries, all of those, assistant treasurers, so I felt they were more pertinent under there, but, yeah.
Any other questions?
So, are you saying that in this bill, it only applies to, like, agency heads?
So.
What exactly is your intended purview? Are you saying any single person serving within an organization that is part of the executive branch may not participate in any campaigning under any circumstances?
So the aim of this bill was so any student government agency, so like the agency as a whole. So for example, like,
So, to follow up, are you saying that?
Whoa, let me finish my thought there. So agency as a whole. So like if an active agency, so for example, SGP, if the agency of SGP went out and explicitly endorsed someone or was actively putting their thumb on the scale for someone, that would be in violation. If a single individual in SGP, let's say vice chair, decided to help out a campaign, they have every individual person with the right to do so.
Okay, that's clear.
Any other questions at this time? We're gonna go into 5 minutes of debate whenever you're ready.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with this. To me, the intent of this bill, the primary reason for its existence, is to deal with elections, and it is to deal with campaigning, both of which are 700 codes. So in my opinion, this should not be a piece of 200 codes legislation. I understand that the subjects themselves may be in the executive branch, but the entire purpose of the bill is to regulate what happens during an election or during a campaign. So for that reason, I think it should absolutely be a 700 codes revision or addition. I don't think this fits in the 200 codes at all, really.
Anyone have any comments about the debate? No? All right, Roger, 2 minutes from now, whenever you're ready.
The only thing of concern that I have for that is that the 700 codes usually only come into effect during the campaign cycle. They don't really affect anything that happens outside of the campaign cycle. So because of that, due to the quirk of the rules, if someone was, let's say, buying merch via an agency for a campaign outside of the election cycle, necessarily nothing would preclude someone from, let's say, censuring someone with the grounds here or pursuing impeachment or any sort of consequences outside the campaign cycle. That'd be my one really rebuttal to that, is that due to the nature of the 700 codes only affecting the campaign cycle, and that the Elections Commission, the one that adjudicates that, only meets during the campaign cycle. So that would be my one issue. Having this under the 200 codes, it really deals with executive conduct more so than campaigning itself. So if they conduct themselves in a way that's putting them on the scales, that's why I would have the 200 codes. So it's really, I might agree that it's maybe a little bit in a gray or light gray area, but I mean, tomato, tomato, everyone has their viewpoints on categorizations. I yield.
We're not gonna move for implementation. We're not gonna move into motions. Are there any motions at this time?
I move to approve SSB 2024-1008 by roll call vote.
All right, just a motion to approve by roll call vote. Anybody object? Seeing none, the motion passes. Clerk, if you could please take the roll.
Brian,
Yes.
Rubai,
No.
Fung,
Yes.
Henley.
Yes.
Just for clarification, I believe we're voting on to vote by roll call, not to take the vote.
No.
Correct?
Wait, we're voting on, this is the vote. It's,
Okay.
yeah,
This is the vote.
yeah. Do we want to
I
continue?
thought we were.
Could I ask, again, I'm not really supposed to speak unless you let me. Was the motion made to approve the bill or fail the bill, or what was
Approve the bill.
So you made the motion to approve the bill?
Yeah, I wasn't aware that we could make a motion to fail as,
You can.
I
Yeah, you
can.
You can.
Point of order.
Yes.
You can just rescind your motion.
Yeah,
and then
I rescind my motion.
Point of information. If we move to fail the bill, and then that doesn't pass, and then that doesn't pass.
If you move it.
So.
Yeah, if it doesn't pass, then it passes, yeah.
And it
Okay,
essentially
so the
passes.
motion to fail is made, and that motion fails. It does not necessarily approve the bill. You then have to make a motion to approve the bill. If you make a motion to approve of the bill and it fails to be approved, the bill is not passed.
Gotcha. All right, would you like to repeat that motion? We can do that all over again.
Yes,
Starting
I
at the top.
I rescind my motion to approve and I remake the motion to fail SSB 2024-1000.
Alright, is there any objections? Seeing none, the motion have a roll call vote, correct?
I roll call vote.
Vote. Court, please.
Yes. Brian,
Yes.
Rubai,
Yes.
Fung,
No.
Henley,
Yes.
Bedin,
Yes.
Insuasti,
No.
Prieto,
Yes.
Wang.
Seeing none, the motion I'm gonna abstain.
There are 6 yeses, 2 nos, 1 abstention.
So with 6 yeses.
Wait, my apologies. 5 yeses, 2 nos, 1 abstention.
5 yeses, 2 noes, and 1 abstention. That bill has been procedurally failed. Alright, and you're now gonna move on to SSB, not without name.
Now we're on 1008.
SSB 24-1008, Incorrect Voter Record Designation Act, IVRDA, authored by Senator Raj Mia. Senator Raj Mia, whenever you're ready, you're gonna go to 5 minutes of debate, or, sorry, presentation, I apologize.
Cool. So yeah, I sit on the Rules and Ethics Committee, and we kind of had a weird situation in which we did end up leveling punishment at the end of this. But a senator had voted one way verbally when we did a voice vote, and then they marked on the voter record a different way. Now the goal of the voter record is so that your constituents can look and say, oh, my senator voted this way on this issue. The issue with that is if you do not fill out your voter record correctly, you're supposed to be given an incorrect voter record, which results in a half absence. That isn't necessarily defined if you vote one way actually and you just mark it differently on a voice vote, because there isn't anything really definitively putting that down. So with this, the goal of this was an incorrect voter record is defined when there's a discrepancy basically, and it will result in a half absence. That was basically what we decided on R&E. I think I might have misspoke earlier. There isn't necessarily a current mechanisms if you have 2 different things. Like if a bill passes and you voted yes and you vote no on your voter record, there's nothing necessarily right now giving you that half absence or punishment for doing so, and like basically defrauding your constituents. So what this bill proposes is that a half absence be rewarded if you do that, because the whole goal of a voter record is so your constituents know how you vote. There's no other way unless they go to the meeting. So this is basically a fail-safe, like don't lie on your voter record or else you'll get a half absence. Yeah, that's really it. I yield.
Okay, we're gonna move into 5 minutes of Q&A whenever you're ready. Okay, we're gonna move into 5 minutes of.
Point of order.
5 minutes of debate. I apologize.
For the last bill that we dealt with, I spoke incorrectly, and I would like to amend my statement. When I made a motion to approve, I said 1008. That is incorrect. I would like to amend that part of my statement. Can I amend that statement? Because I think we were all in consensus that was 1007.
Yeah.
But I'd like to amend my statement to say 1007. Furthermore, I don't believe that the committee provided a principle on which that was failed. So I believe that is required. So in that instance, I'm not sure if I can offer that now. When?
If I could refer that question to the preliminary.
No problem. That is 1007.
Correct.
And let me quickly take a look. This is the one. Can you give me the plain phrasing under which it was failed, and I can see which one of the 5 criteria that falls
Oh,
under?
I have an idea. In my opinion, it was failed under constitutionality, either or with legality or implication, because it should have been a 700 code revision. So I think that could be implication, and I would argue that because this would allow for future bills relating to campaign to be submitted under the 200 codes rather than the 700 codes.
So no problem. In my opinion, it's more suited under implication, just because since it wasn't explicitly written as a 700 code, it doesn't fall under that.
All right. So I move to amend the reasoning behind the vote on SSB 2024-1007 to indicate that the bill was failed on implication due to the committee's belief that this should remain in the 700 codes as it pertains to elections. And I make that motion by unanimous consent.
Any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. I also ask the clerk is able to adjust the minutes to reflect accurately. All right, given that, we're now going to move back into Student Senate Bill 2024, 1008. I apologize. Encourage voter resignation, voter designation act. We're now going to move into 5 minutes of debate. Whenever you guys are ready.
All right. Only,
I'm so sorry. I just wanted to ask, so we've gone through several bills. Have there been motions made to amend the title of each bill to ensure that numbering is accurate?
yes, I changed every bill to start to 2024.
No, that's not what I'm asking for. I'm asking for, so all these bills likely say 2024, you did amend.
I didn't change the XXX.
Dash.
I didn't change those to the numbers. Should I do that now?
That's all supposed to be done each
Should
time
I
we go through each.
Okay. So we have to amend every bill.
Right,
during
and now the problem is that all those bills have just been approved, and now they're ready to be sent to the replacement agenda committee. And you can't really, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I don't believe you can just go back and then re-amend them, and it's just gonna be a whole mess. So I would suggest, I think for now, the best solution is probably just to make sure that that's done each time from now on, to make sure that the number is correctly amended in the bill. And for the ones that just slipped through, like 5 bills or whatever, that weren't fixed, we can just fix those in the replacement agenda committee. But just for the future, please
Okay.
remember to amend that. Thank you.
For figuring that out. Again, are we in debate? Or yeah, we're still in 5 minutes for debate. Whenever you're ready.
All right, so I think that it's a valid concern that senators are not voting the same on their record as they are in the meetings. I do have an issue with one sentence of this bill. The second sentence that begins with "these include marking no on a motion that was approved by unanimous consent." Small error with the E after vote at the end of that sentence. I'm not really too concerned with that E. I'm more concerned that if a vote was approved by unanimous consent, it does not have to be on the voter record at all. So I don't believe that anyone's marking no on a unanimously approved motion. That just doesn't make any sense. Point of information,
Yes.
Mayor for the Senator Mina.
We can talk about it in final privilege, but there are things like the yes and the no's that can be made in the minutes agenda. Like, you know how it's printed? Like,
Yes.
Bill, the yes and the no. The minutes agenda, we can all approve by saying, I approve by unanimous consent, but we still all have to mark yes or no respectively on the agenda itself. So if someone's saying, no, I didn't like this bill, and I'm saying I'm voting no, even though they voted unanimously, that's why that's there still, because we still do have to mark it accurately.
Okay. One more really quick semantic thing. I'm sorry. I just want to, like, my first meeting, take it easy on me too. This refers to voter records. I believe in every other instance in the rules of procedures it's a voting record. I'm not sure if that changes anything or if that should be amended this time.
That can be amended later in
But
the
that-
clauses.
Well, that's still part of the, so I'm not, that I think that has to be amended. I don't think that's a significant difference to the bill, if Senator Mina agrees. But, I mean, wait,
We're still
yeah.
so does anybody else have any comments or debate? No? All right, we're gonna move into final privilege. Probably gonna be ready, 2 minutes.
I mean, yeah, semantics, voter records, I mean, if you think records is more pertinent, then change it, just amend that and fix the E. As I said earlier, we still, for unanimous consent votes, have to check yes or no for those. Main motions don't have to be written on the other section anymore, so that doesn't apply, but that still is pertinent for the yes and no votes there. Yeah, I mean, if you just want to do away with that second sentence and just strike it completely, I'm not going to be necessarily opposed to that, but that was really just for that section of the agenda that we usually have, so that people accurately fill that out too. But y'all's prerogative.
Point of information. Is this one of the rules and procedures things that you believe should be sent to the ad hoc committee?
Well, my understanding is that all rules and procedures changes should be sent to the ad hoc committee. I wish I could answer your question more directly. I guess yes. I think it should be.
Okay.
All right, are there any motions at this time?
I move to amend I move to enact this bill, not enact, I move to make this bill 2024-1008 as it has not been previously named as such, so by unanimous consent.
All right,
I-
or incurring bills
yeah,
or resolution
I move-
acted.
I move to amend the title to say Student Senate Bill 2024-1008 by unanimous consent.
Oh, any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes.
All right, I move to amend SSB 2024-1008 to change all instances of the word voter record to say voting record by unanimous consent.
Any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. Are there any other motions at this time?
I move to amend SSB 2024-1008 to remove the second sentence to be possibly amended at a later date, but to remove it. Is that point of information, is that allowed? Can I strike it and then it can be re-added later?
You can
I
make
don't
an
know.
amendment on the floor, or
Okay.
the MRNA could amend.
So
it.
I move to amend SSB 2024-1008 to strike the second sentence beginning with "these include marking no," ending with roll call VOT. By unanimous consent.
Are there any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. Is there any other motion at this time?
I move to refer this bill to the ad hoc committee on, what is the proper name?
Rules and procedures.
Ad hoc committee on rules and procedures by unanimous consent.
I object. I think that we already had our presentation Q&A period. We can just make a decision now as a committee. I think it's already been, we've already said.
Are there any other motions at this time?
Motion made by roll call vote.
Are you going to motion to by roll call vote? Oh, are there objections? Seeing none, the motion passes.
I just want to
Yes.
say one thing, like in saving time, you don't have, it's in, if, I guess, I don't know if you guys have the 300 codes pulled up, but in 301 coding system, the Senate secretaries automatically name them. You can do so,
Oh.
you're allowed to.
Wait, so we don't have to do
You don't
that?
have to, no.
Oh.
It's a weird recent trend that I don't know why the Senate's doing. I meant to
It's a
point it out when I was
fine.
parliamentarian.
Okay, so could we go straight into just approving and, or, that makes sense, right?
Yeah, we don't have
Or
to
was it
every
when-
time say.
Yeah.
You don't have to amend the title every time. It's, for your reference, it's 301.1 and 301.3. It provides the Senate secretaries to be in charge of maintaining the coding.
And can I also ask you a question too? Actually, now, this is weird, you guys are right. Parliamentarians, if there is a vote to approve or a vote to fail a bill, and there's, let me see this, fail, and that's, that one's majority vote, and it's failed, is that, how do I explain it? We were just talking about the approve versus
Right.
failing, like there was a motion to approve, and there's a majority vote, and it's all yeses, then it's approved, correct? But if it's a motion to fail, do they have to remake that motion to approve?
No, because you failed it.
She's saying
It's,
if the motion to fail fails,
Fails,
it
it's
doesn't
not-
necessarily.
it has to be.
Oh, okay,
approved
gotcha,
separately.
that makes more sense. Thank you.
For the records, really quickly, before you struck the second sentence, what was it that you made?
Voter record becomes voting record in all instances.
Okay.
All right, so so we're in the motion to, we remade the motion by roll call vote to refer this to,
The, our.
I do
rules and
want
procedures.
to, yes, so I do want to say that I believe that in the interest of not just time, but also giving the bills their proper, not 5 criteria review, but like their specific criteria review under the ad hocs that have been established, it might be proper. Although you don't have to, you can refer all of the rules and procedures and then like legislation as a block to the committee that was established to hear that type of legislation.
And I believe that starts around 1040, you said earlier?
Yes, I started writing down the list, but for some reason or another, my computer glitched and deleted all of it, so I have to redo it, and it's a lot of legislation, which is why I'm trying to really point out that given how much legislation is rules and procedures on the books, I think that it should go to that committee.
Okay. Very good. You're still in the middle of the vote, so please
Yeah.
take the vote again. This is the vote to refer this legislation to the Rules and Procedures Ad hoc Committee. Whenever they're ready?
Brian?
Yes.
Rubai?
yes.
Fung?
No.
Henley?
Yes.
Badin?
Yes.
Insuasti?
No.
Prieto?
Yes.
5 yes, oh, sorry, Wang. 5 yeses, 2 noes, 1 abstention.
With 5 yeses, 2 noes, and 1 abstention, that legislation has officially been referred to the Rules Ad hoc Committee. Now we're going to move on to. Okay. We are now going to move on to SSB 2024-1009, Initiative of Corporation Procedure.
Point of order.
Yes.
That is also a similar codes revision which we've already.
Okay.
Yes, so 1010 has also been referred to. 11 has also, yes, so we are now in line for 1012.
Point of personal office, or do it to recess?
I'm gonna call recess. Starting at 1:34, we're calling recess
Wait,
until.
motion. I move to call recess for 2 minutes.
Still call back.
I'm still call back by the chair, okay, sure.
Alright, any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. We're now going to recess starting at 1:34 p.m. until call back to chair.
So when?
Until call back to chair.
It'll be quick, we're not here to mess around with call back by the chair, so let's.
Stop the recording.
Of course, every 2 years. It's every 2 years only for like 30 kids, so I mean, is it really that good? Probably not, but at least they have, not even at least, but would you be amenable to adding like further right behind
Yeah.
integrating?
Yeah, I'm fine with adding a qualifier of the sort. Further sounds good. Integrating further climate change. Yeah, I think that sounds fine. Unless
Point
we
of-
think of a different verb or
Yeah.
something in there.
Furthermore, point of information, I would like to know if we are able to add to ask to be sponsors for legislation that is appearing here.
Yeah, the committee can amend and add themselves as sponsors if
Yeah.
you want. I'm fine with it. If you guys wanna
Is it
add
just the
yourself.
committee or individual members as well?
Do it.
You can add, you can add anyone.
Okay.
If you want.
Cool.
Does anyone have any other questions? Okay, we're gonna move on to 5 minutes of break whenever you guys are ready.
That should
Break.
pass.
Right, there's 2 minutes of final project, so whenever you're ready.
If you guys are gonna amend the sponsors line, can you have Zoe on, Zoe Ricketts?
Yes.
Alright, great. Did you wait the rest of your time?
Yeah.
You're now gonna move to motions. Anyone have any motions at this time?
I move to amend the sponsors line to include Senator Zoe Richter, should that be, leader of Green Caucus.
That's up to for your purview if you want to add. that
Chair of
distinction.
Green Caucus, Zoe Richter, I believe is more
Green
appropriate.
Caucus Chair.
Green Caucus Chair Zoe Richter, Senator Aaron Rubai, Senator Lori Wang. Any members not wishing to add themselves to the sponsors line?
Add me too.
Okay, so yes, I move to add every individual member of the Judiciary Committee. Senator Pro Tem Saket Tamara, Senator H. Hamster, to the sponsors line, by unanimous consent.
Are there any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes.
Um,
Do you have any other motions?
You wanna change the layout?
Yep, I move to amend the fourth whereas clause to include the word further after the word integrating. Between integrating and climate, should say further, by unanimous consent.
Are there any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. Are there any other motions at this time?
I move to approve SSB 2024-1014 by unanimous consent.
Any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. SSB 2020.
No, I just want to say, what was the final amendment you made?
It was
The word,
further after the fourth whereas clause,
Mhm.
after the word integrating, so integrating further climate change education.
Okay.
So Student Senate Bill 2024-1014, resolution in support of integrating climate change education into the university's curriculum has now been approved. We are now moving on to SSB 2024-1015. Senator 15, I believe, sorry, I apologize.
Yeah.
Senate Resources Reform, 100 Codes Revision, authored again by Senator Rajmia. Senator Rajmia, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so this is a simple change to the 100 codes. It adds a new section. It mandates the Senate Secretary to create a list of documents that has all serving senators, their respective party affiliation, and any existing vacancies, and also adds a visual representation of the Senate's partisan breakdown in a pie chart format. So independents, any respective party vacancies is included on this pie chart, and it also has to list the legislative session. So, but I did behind the envelope math, and I think we're around the 110th U.S. Student Senate, if I'm correct in my math. And I just had an example. That isn't necessarily what it would be for our respective one. We might do 11th or 12th. I'm not entirely sure. And it should be updated at the beginning of each. Constituency period for the information. This is more of just like for constituents, so they know like what the Senate breakdown is and whatnot. I added the 110th UF Student Senate because I looked at FSU's respective website, and they have listed which student senate or student government they're on, and they're at their like 89th or something government. So I got kind of jealous of that. So this is more of like a tidying, cleaning up tool. Yeah, and that's all. Any questions? I yield.
Now we're moving on to 5 minutes of Q&A whenever you guys are ready. Anyone have any questions? Nope, we're gonna move on to 5 minutes of debate.
all right, so, sorry. This semantic thing is actually, I think, pretty significant. in the first sentence, it states that the Senate Secretary is responsible for regularly uploading a document. Then in the last sentence, it says this document should be updated at the beginning and end of each constituency period. So theoretically, I think regularly uploading contradicts with every constituency period. I think they mean two different things. And furthermore, I argue that sentence 2 already exists. It's updated in real time. I was informed of this, that the Senate resources page has all serving senators, their party affiliations, and existing vacancies updated in real time. So I don't think, I think this bill just, I think it's a reasonable sentiment, but the contradiction I think is pretty significant because this could affect the speed at which these are updated now, which is faster than they probably would be if this were to pass. And I think it's important that vacancies especially are updated in real time. So I think that that's a pretty serious contradiction, as well as the fact that it already exists, which makes the second sentence moot anyway. That's my contention.
Anyone have anything to say? No, we'll move on to 2 minutes final public development. Are you ready?
Alright, so the two issues are the regularly thing. I mean, you can do something on a regular schedule 2 times a semester. I feel like that definition is semantics, and it'd be a very liberal interpretation to assume that it's going to be each time a vacancy or something changes in Senate when it's outlined further in detail down the line. I mean, you can do something biannually and say it's regularly because you're doing it biannually. Second thing is in terms of, like, yes, we do have a Senate roster that's posted on the website in real time. This was because the reason I wrote the bill in the way that I did is because ideally this would be an Excel sheet. So having the list of every senator down on the Excel sheet and then having a respective pie chart on it could make it much easier for people to look at it than having people go back and forth. I've also spoken to Jackie multiple times about updating the SG website, and there seems to be usually difficulties with the SG website, and I would doubt the SG website's ability to put a pie chart necessarily in the same fashion as a list next to a list of senators as it currently stands. So maybe doing that in a document such as an Excel sheet, having a link just like we have roll calls, would be more pertinent, and that's the reason why I worked the way that it is. So I feel like the issue in terms of regularly with the first sentence is just a red herring, so to speak.
I asked them to speak after the 2 minutes earlier, the 30-second minute.
And as for I think the constituency thing clarifies that. I think I've made myself known. Yeah, thank you.
Direct a question.
Yes.
All right. I think you're right. I don't think regularly necessarily contradicts that it couldn't be every constituency period. I just think that it could slow down the updating of the vacancies. Because if it only is required every semester, I feel like that could actually hurt. Even though I don't disagree with updating the website. Do you feel that that's reasonable? Because it's already live and I don't want to give them a reason to make it slower.
I don't see how it would make it slower. Like, this is, we're really just dealing with a couple names. I don't really know how that makes it slower, but tomato, people work on their own time scales, even if it's just updating a name. Yeah, I don't really know what to say.
Are there any motions at this time?
I move to fail SSP 2024-1015 by roll call vote.
Okay, any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. Clerk, please read the roll.
Yes. 1 second, sorry. Okay. Brian?
Yes.
Rubai?
Yes.
Fung?
No.
Henley?
Yes.
Bedin?
No.
Insuasti?
No.
Prieto?
Yes.
Wang?
What is the vote count?
4 yeses, 3 nos.
I'm not abstaining from voting.
Alright, so four yes, 3 no, 1 abstention.
So with 4 yeses, 3 no, and 1 abstention, the bill has been failed.
Point of order.
Yep.
What was the criteria?
Yes, that's what I was going to do. Point of order. The criteria would be implication, where this implicates that the period in which the Senate document on the resources page could be uploaded could be slowed down significantly as to decrease the efficiency in letting the student body know about vacant replacement seats, as well as the partisan breakdown and all serving senators' names and email addresses. So the implication.
Okay, so just to reiterate that again, Student Senate Bill 2024-1015, Senate Resources Reform Act, County Code Division has been procedurally failed based on the basis of implication. We're now moving on to SB 2024-1016, Standing Committee Comment Act 000 Rules of Procedure Division, again authored by Senator Rajmia. Rajmia, whenever you're ready for 5 minutes.
Okay. If you look at it, it does have a lot of changes, but I can boil it down to you guys, for you guys. Idea of this bill, public comment in committees, so if someone like Judiciary or any other committee is dealing, for example, budget, dealing with something that affects students can come in and give a little bit of input. So like for budget, if we're hearing a bill that might substantially change the budget codes, student orgs can come in, or at least like the president, and say, hey, this is my opinion on this bill. This is how it would affect my club. Take that into account as you guys do your thing today. This also has fail-safes, so no one can come in and waste everyone's goddamn time. The chair can say, I think this is out of order, and simply override them because it's disruptive conduct. They can give warnings as well, so it's not just dictatorial. So they can give a couple warnings and say, okay, you're just talking to talk. This also limits it to a couple minutes, just like in Senate. You have to sign up ahead of time, so it's very similar to how we sign up for public comment now. And it only applies to standing committees. Ad hoc committees, it can apply for it, but Senate has to have a 2/3 vote to compel that. So, for example, a standing committee for rules and procedures changes doesn't necessarily have to abide by this unless Senate obligates them to, but for current standing committees, they would have it for the business at hand. And it's only 2 minutes to speak. When standing committees, it's not even 5 minutes, it's much less. And if someone's just being deliberately disruptive, that right can be suspended by the chair because it's something disruptive conduct. There is precedence for this in like local and regional governments, so the city council, if you're shouting obscenities and you are being actively disruptive to the environment at hand, the chair can say, okay, get the hell out, invoke your right to do so. It has to be germane to the conversation. So that's what this does. If you guys want to look at the verbiage, I encourage you guys to read this top to bottom. I understand if I just read this off, it would be kind of absurd, but yeah, I yield.
And then we go to 5 minutes of Q&A when everybody's ready. No more questions, or we move to 5 minutes of debate.
All right, so, point of order, please have that. Or point of information, sorry. Can members of the public sponsor any legislation that is heard by a committee? Or do they is that defined?
Yeah,
They
people,
can?
yeah.
Would they be allowed to speak during presentation if they're on the sponsors line?
So when it comes to members of the public, yes, but they can only be an executive board member of a club. So any other student couldn't
So
necessarily.
they have to be on the.
They have to be an
board?
executive board member, such as the president of a club or a vice president or a treasurer.
Okay, understood.
That's the only instance.
Okay.
Continuing on, is there any other?
All right. This. Firstly, I do think that I like the fail-safe. I think it's a little bit lenient because if it's only 2 minutes long, then they have to receive 3 in total to be required to stop speaking.
I believe it's 2.
It's more than 2. So in 2 minutes, that's quite a few warnings. I believe this could be kind of used to say things not germane in these public comments. Furthermore, because the committees are a subsidiary of Student Senate, any the bills that eventually make it to the floor or another committee could have double public comment, which I think is unnecessary and will drastically decrease the efficiency. If there's several public comments related to the same legislation, I think that's a bad precedent to set. Those are my primary fears with this one, but yeah.
Does anyone else want to add?
I recognize that concern, but I also think that the ability to have public comment at a standing committee could perhaps make it so public comments are more specific towards what's happening in that committee and might even decrease public comment in general in like an actual Senate meeting because what they had to talk about was specific to that standing committee.
mean, yeah, I agree with that. With that being said, I do think people might take advantage of that and speak in both, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But yeah, just wanted to add that.
So I think one of my primary concerns with the possibility of a double public comment is these students, if they do support these bills or legislation, that procedurally they aren't technically supposed to determine anything related to the 5 criteria. Versus they could have opinions on it, they could strongly support it. But as for the Judiciary Committee or the Budget Committee that debates the budgetary laws, the committee's established for a reason. Public comment wouldn't necessarily give anything extra to the standing committee related to the thing it's supposed to do. Like the only things we're really supposed to do are debate the 5 criteria, whether or not the bills follow them. So I'm not sure if public comment would help at all in that, because they're not necessarily going to be able to, students, that haven't read the entirety of the rules and procedures or the codes, wouldn't necessarily be able to help in these meetings in that regard, and which I feel is the primary purpose of the committees. They each have a designated responsibility. So I feel that their public comments are more appropriate when they're heard on the floor, where it's being debated. Based opinions do matter, and student preferences do matter in both. But I think it's more prudent to do that on the floor rather than in committee, which is primarily designed to determine a few things.
Additionally, a large enough group of people can effectively filibuster an entire committee meeting, even with the 2+ warnings, because if you just had like 20 people go up and give public comment, it would take them theoretically at least probably 20 seconds, 30 seconds to get to those 3 warnings at minimum, so they can just keep going and going and going.
I disagree with that. I think that there's a reason public comment's allowed at regular meetings. I think decreasing the efficiency is a concern, but I don't think it's the primary reason that this should not be allowed. I think there's a reason why public comment does exist. So yeah.
As for the committees and how they work, I mean, when it comes to budget, at least, we're obviously debating like fiscal and monetary policy for that, and some of that isn't necessarily just to be in line. It is like, what do we think is best here? How is this going to affect clubs? So it's really like we have to discern what's the best policy, but there isn't like a 5 criteria, unless we're like funding bullets, which is outright illegal. So like it does have an effect, and having input is a nice thing. But I also think we should take into account when it comes to the double public comment thing. It's like in total that is 7 minutes. 7 minutes to speak on a legislation of your choice, which, if you look back on it, it isn't a lot of time. And also, how many people really sign up for public comment usually? At maximum, it's like 30 people in Senate itself. And Senate meets at a regular time. Committees tend to not meet regularly. They debate bills. Some people don't even know we really have committees. So I think the likelihood of someone coming into a committee alone to send public comment is small, but I think those people who do know what's happening and that laws are being created that might affect me, if they're willing to come in and give public comment, I don't see any reason why we should necessarily limit them, especially if it's just 2 minutes. And if anyone's being nefarious, we can't give them warnings. I don't think anyone would really filibuster it. I'm just like, I don't know. Bills originate in committees, and as soon as they get to the floor, the likelihood of them being passed are much higher. So for some people, especially when it comes to budget bills, if it's not like pointed out in committee, the chances of it getting all the way through is much higher. They don't catch it then. Even if they come into Senate, though a deliberative body, it can be very difficult to like amend something and change it once the wheels are moving. Especially when it gets to second readings. Once it's in second readings, we can't amend it without going back to first readings.
Point of information. I just really quickly want to refer to germane to the business of the meeting, particularly for judiciary. Would germane just mean relating to, like, I want a little bit more clarity on that. Would it relate to any bill, resolution, anything like legislation, or would it have to be specifically about why it meets the 5 criteria?
So for the determinants of germane, it would be discretion of the chair. Because the chair is going to be dishing out the warnings,
Okay.
and they would take into context the RMP. I believe it has to reference the legislation at hand, and they can talk about policy, they can talk about the 5 criteria, their prerogative. But it would be directly towards the chair's discretion ultimately to dish out those warnings. So if it's something that they feel is like not germane, they'll give a warning. obviously, if they're abusing that power, the committee has the right to like overturn that decision, just like in Senate. But it's ultimately to the chair's discretion for the jurisdiction or something.
We're now going to move on to motions. Are there any motions at this time?
I move to amend the bill to, in 2H, where it says, Speaker will automatically yield their time to the chair if they receive more than 2 warnings, to amend that to if they receive more than 1 warning by unanimous consent.
Is there any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. Are there any other motions at this time?
I move to approve SSB 2024-1016 by unanimous consent.
I object.
Then by roll call vote.
Point of order. If a motion to approve fails, but there is also a motion to lay on the table, what happens? If I would like to make a motion to lay on the table, because it would technically, but it would have already failed if it doesn't pass.
I'm going to direct that question to the parliamentarian.
Right, so your question is, if you have two motions, two competing motions, one to
Yes.
approve and one to table?
Yes.
Well, you would have to hear the motion to table first, because once you hear the motion to approve, you can't undo that. So the order would be, you would hear the motion to table first. If that fails, then you vote to approve. If it passes, then you don't have to vote to approve because it's been tabled.
Okay.
Did I answer?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Yeah, you got it.
Good.
Are there any motions at this time? Again, you made the motion to by roll call vote, to approve by roll call vote?
Yeah.
Clerk, please roll.
Yes. All right. Brian,
No.
Rubai,
No.
Fung,
Yes.
Henley,
Yes.
Bedin,
Yes.
Insuasti,
Yes.
Prieto,
No.
Wang.
What's the vote right now?
It's 4 to 3.
4 3 and
4 yeses, 3 noes. 3 noes.
3 no. I am going to vote no.
Okay.
That's
Point of order.
Yeah.
What happens in the event of a tie with no chair? Because there's an even number of members of the committee at the time.
Like the event of a tie with no chair, that's a novel question.
So there's a tie, there are 8 senators on the Judiciary Committee and no chair. So, well, we have a temporary chair who voted it into a tie because there is an even number.
Right.
Also look into that.
So,
But it's not.
It's not like they get 2 votes.
Yeah.
Or, like, they
right,
chose
right,
to
yeah,
vote.
it was the chair.
The chair voted.
Her vote tied it. Her vote tied
Oh,
it.
no, yeah, they don't get the extra vote, it would just fail.
I think it's.
Wait, would the members of the Judiciary Committee be amenable to rescinding that motion to make it a motion to lay on the table until there is an odd number of members on the committee so that it could be remade at that time?
Parliamentarian?
well, I'll let you get clarity on that, but I have your answer. Technically speaking, well, I'll let you do that first because I don't want to influence.
Okay. Are you amenable to that or no?
Or actually,
Any senator? Huh?
Yes.
would you like to,
Just so we don't fall into some procedural trap here.
would you like to make a motion this time?
What, so anyone who voted to approve, are you amenable to that?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
Yes, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, we can, have to move for some.
Yeah, so, could you move to rescind the motion?
Yeah, I move to rescind my motion.
Okay, there's been a motion to rescind. Are there objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. Are there any other motions at this time?
I move to lay Bill 2024-1016 on the table until the event there's an odd number of senators present on the committee by unanimous consent, or until it shares
The
the
answer to your time question,
Oh.
you can give it to him to read if you
I
want, or I can
believe
read
the
it.
parliamentarian already said that he was going to refrain from giving us that answer until after the vote, just to not influence our decision.
Okay.
So we are currently in,
Oh, I move to rescind. I move to rescind my motion by unanimous consent. I'm gonna remake it.
Okay.
I move to remake my motion to lay Bill 2024-1016 on the table until the election of a permanent chair of the Judiciary Committee by unanimous consent.
Are there any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. Okay.
Point of information, may I ask what procedurally would happen now the vote is over?
So usually when there is a tie and there's no chair, almost never happens, but let's bear with it, right? So you defer to the bylaws. In this case, the bylaws are the rules and procedures. There's no, at least to my understanding, there's no criteria for that specific question, so we default to Robert's rules. When we default to Robert's rules, when you need a majority to pass, a 50-50 split is not a majority, so it wouldn't have passed, just for future reference.
So that makes a difference.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Alright, so that has been procedure table. SSB, yes.
Can I ask a question real
Yes.
quick? But, okay. So I just want to clarify what just happened there. So the chair voted on the matter to create a tie?
Yes.
Okay, so why was there the assumption that there was no chair?
Well, there's an even number.
What were the vote totals before you
4 to
voted?
3.
4 to 3.
Four yeses.
Yes to approve.
Yes.
Since you cast
And
your
so
vote
you
no,
cast the vote no to
and then
change
they-
the result. Okay.
Yeah,
So
they-
I just feel, and then, so there goes.
Yeah, but in the end, we rescinded it so we could.
Oh, yeah,
so we
no, I get
tabled
that,
it,
I
so
just,
yeah.
right, no, I get that, I just wanted to see, because like, if it would have been 4-3 in the other direction, then your
Yes.
vote wouldn't have mattered, so it was just like said and done. But since it was actually a majority in favor, and then you changed the result, it's, yeah, so we're good.
See,
I also like the Mr. I didn't vote no to cause a tie, I voted no because.
Oh, no, I know, you
Yes.
have every right to vote if it reflects a different result, I'm not like
Ready?
accusing you.
Point of order. I believe I said just meeting after a permanent chair is elected.
Mhm.
I move to amend that, say the first meeting after a chair is elected.
Alright.
Or appointed.
How do we do that given that it's already been?
I'm amending it, I'm moving to amend.
Okay.
I would just suggest to just completely avoid all this complication as like when the chair, whatever, just table the bill, and then at the next meeting, if there's no chair elected by then, which hopefully there is a chair, then just table it again.
Okay.
Just keep tabling it. It's
I
okay.
will say that it was my understanding from your previous motion that it was implicit that it would have been the first meeting after,
Okay.
because you said until there was an,
Okay.
you know,
Making
certain
sure-
number.
Yes,
Right.
got it.
Okay, so SSB 1016 has been procedurally tabled. We're now moving on to SSB 1019. The common last service award, 500 codes revision again, authored by Senator Rajmia. Senator Rajmia, whenever you're ready, you go into 5 minutes of completion.
Okay, so the Colin Lash Service Award, I first have to get this out of the way. His last name is not spelled L-A-S-H, it's spelled L-A-S-C-H, right? Yeah, sorry, I tried to, yeah. So Colin Lash, he was a graduate student, he had kids and whatnot, he served the prior term. For medical reasons, he couldn't continue the rest of his term, and I thought creating an award to represent him, because he was a dedicated civil servant. He was also a government contractor. He also served on the budget committee, and he was very dedicated to that as well. He was very bipartisan, it was no nonsense, and he was just a dedicated grad student and father and everything. So I thought creating a service award for him because of his dedication and sacrifice to be a senator and to serve this community of over 60,000 students would be worthwhile. So I created this bill to do that. We have multiple service awards and whatnot in the 500 code, so this would just outline an additional one. So yeah, I think the only amendment that needs to be made is the last name, if I correct. Just has to be added to C. Yeah, I believe that's all. I yield the remainder of my time.
We're now moving to 5 minutes of Q&A whenever you're ready. Questions? 5 minutes of debate.
Okay, this is gonna sound like a jerk here, I don't mean to, I wanna make sure this is properly made. Senator Lash, very exemplary dedication to service, very obvious. This is just unbelievable dedication to a student organization, considering everything that he did in his life. That it's amazing. I do have a concern that what this is commemorating is very similar to the John Michael Stratton Memorial Award. I think that it should maybe include different language other than this award is subject to virtues of sacrifice, dedication, and service. I'm not sure how that should be amended, but I think this deserves to be considered as a separate distinction for different virtues, as was the ones listed by the John Michael Stratton Memorial Award, which is Rule 381.1, if you want to look at it. I'm not arguing at all with Senator Lash's dedication, commitment, and sacrifice that he made. I just want to make sure that if this is passed, that it commemorates something specifically to his service at the University of Florida. Does that make sense? This is like Brandy, I want to.
Is there any other debate? No. Okay, we're happy to move into 2 minutes of final privilege. Raj, whenever you're ready. 2 minutes of final privilege.
I do want to see the bill passed, so I understand the concerns of maybe amending it. We can do that. We can work on that and change it. There's nothing forcing our hand to do it now, finish the job here. So I'm open to tabling it. I can withdraw the bill after this meeting, make some edits and resubmit it, or I can get some amendments to you guys instead of withdrawing it, so the next meeting you guys can deal with it. I do think we can all agree that the idea of honoring Colin Lash was a good idea. So if you guys would like to table it, I'm all for it. Please don't fail it. Please. Yeah, I'll double check 381. Yeah.
You wait the rest of your time?
Yeah.
We're not going to move the motions. Are there any motions at this time?
Point of information.
Yes.
What would your preference be for? Because I don't want to fail this either, but I do you want to table it, withdraw it? How?
So
What's
you guys table it, and I send an email to Judish and saying I withdraw this bill. That's what I did to Socket.
Okay. You're amenable to that?
Yeah.
Because I do not want to fail this. So. All right.
Are there any motions at this time?
I move to table SSB 2024-1019 by unanimous consent.
Any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. SSB 2024-1019 has now been officially tabled. We are moving on to SSB 2024-1020. The Department of Labor Act, Faculty Code Revision again, authored by Senator Raj Mia, sponsored by Senator Nathaniel Pelton. Whenever you guys are ready, 5 minutes of presentation.
Oh,
So it's just going to take 5 minutes.
okay. So this is a multi-page thing. This creates an entirely new department in the executive branch. Yeah, it does. The Department of Labor. So the idea about this was so students could have a voice in terms of their student workers could have a voice. And English today. So many bills. They can have a voice in terms of their labor and whatnot. So especially with GAU, we have a lot of students who are part of that and have recently been under attack by state governments. This gives a dedicated department to advocate for not only unionized students, but also students as a whole and their working conditions here on campus. For those of you who don't know, the student body president sits on the board of trustees, which is really the board that really governs UF for the most part. Ben Sass also sits on that board as well. So this is an executive department that would be an executive branch that would help advise the student body president, treasurer, and everyone else on those issues and allow a forum for those issues to be debated and how we can go about supporting unionized workers and workers in general that are employed here on campus and whatnot. So they'll just be tasked with, there will also be a board of labor that's also tasked with oversight to the Department of Labor to help fulfill its mission. So it'll consist of representatives from all across the student government, which is representative of students as a whole. So there'll be a representative from the student body treasurer's office, the president, 2 representatives from the graduate student councils, a Senate union, the rights union Senate liaison position, which I held previously. For those who don't know, the rights union is probably one of the biggest of the big 5 that employs students here on campus. So we employ a lot of students. A lot of them are graduate students too. And I feel since the rights union liaison represents them in large part that they should also be a part of this. Same thing with rec sports, which is probably the next biggest, if not equal to the rights union. Employs so many undergrad and graduate students that they should also have a voice. And one extra ex officio member from the Graduate Assistants United, which is effectively the graduate student union to help unionize students. All these people would help add to the forum of creating a dialogue of student workers and whatnot. There are many workers, especially graduate students, who are living like paycheck to paycheck. They don't really have a voice or an outlet. They don't know that student government can be a voice for them to be advocated for. So this is supposed to help them create a centralized way of like, hey, you can talk to us. We can talk to the person that represents you on the board of trustees. This bill also outlines procedures and whatnot for the board, how the terms would go, regular meetings, and other parliamentary ways of how it would conduct quorum and how it could meet potentially. This is really just to represent students, and especially graduate students too, who have really been under attack. Like a lot of our graduate students, especially those who work in rights, literally cannot work off of campus. They like have no choice. So we fund basically their jobs and represent them. We should allow a forum for them to communicate and to have representation dedicated for them. Because in a way they have no other choice, and this allows a forum for that. If you have any questions or answers, I can try to answer it, but for me to read each and every section again of the 3-page thing would be a little bit too much, so I yield.
Now moving into 5 minutes Q&A.
I have, so it says in 580-013 that the Secretary of Labor should be appointed by the Board of Labor. But the Secretary of Labor sits on the Board of Labor, so is it the whole committee is formed and then they choose the chair, essentially?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, this is a really comprehensive bill, and I clearly a lot of effort went into this, and I really respect it's written very well. I will say, I have a question about the wording regarding student workers. Is this referring to every student employed by the University of Florida, undergraduate and graduate, or is it solely referring to graduate students? All students?
So graduate students that we
Okay.
employ via NSVs and undergrad students that we employ via NSVs.
Okay. Okay, what questions?
Any other questions at this time? Move into 5 minutes of debate.
Okay. This bill, I think doing a piecemeal approach might be a little bit better. I also want to consult general counsel specifically regarding consent to be represented by this board for student employees. I don't know how the state of Florida would necessarily see this, but I would.
Commentary?
I can answer that. So when I first learned about this bill, I mean, it was a bit weird, but it is actually a thing under Florida law. Florida Statute 447.301, Section 5 allows that in the state community college and university, the student government of each community college or university shall establish procedures for the selection of and shall select a student representative to be present at his or her discretion in the negotiations between any bargaining agent of the employees and the board of trustees for that university. Kind of weird that this is the power of student government, but in Tallahassee.
Okay, I have one more question. How many people here have read through and understood the entirety of this bill? Just a quick question of all the senators present.
I've read through it because
Yeah. This.
my reservations are kind of with what you're saying. I don't know like exactly what all the like federal and state laws about collective bargaining and stuff are, but I just don't know like, are we forcibly putting these student workers into essentially a collective bargaining agreement without them actually consenting to it through the establishment of this? Like, so here it says, Department of Labor shall strive to actively support student worker units involved in collective. I guess that isn't necessarily only if they are involved in it already. It shall advocate for the rights of all these students and facilitate communication with students and relevant university authorities, but what if they don't want that? I guess is my reservation.
Would you all like?
I like the
you would rather
idea of it.
students have the choice, whether or
Yeah,
not to
I like the
participate?
general idea of it, like I'm all for it.
I like the idea
like the
that-
bargaining, where it's, like we're able to get it, but I just don't want, like, people who maybe don't want that, who are, like, let's say, like a rec sports worker who thinks this is bad, to then kind of be forced into it without the consent.
I like that it,
Maybe like an opt-in thing.
I like that it advocates for GAU specifically because those students have already opted into a union.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of that. I'm not sure that I am educated enough on Florida statute to make a ruling like as effectively as possible for what this deserves. I strongly suggest we advise general counsel on this. Like this is probably, in my argument, the most possibly dangerous piece of legislation that we're hearing today. And I think it would be really necessary to get the opinions of people that might be more educated than us on this matter before we pass it. Would the author of, point of information, may I direct it to the author of the bill? Would the author of the bill be amenable to us tabling this to get an opinion from general counsel?
Yeah, tabling and, yeah,
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
All right.
I recognize it's a little bit detailed, a little bit too detailed.
It's good sentiment. I agree with, especially the graduates portion of it. I'm a bit concerned about the lack of consent from the undergraduate student employees, which is not enough, in my opinion, to fail it immediately, but it is enough to get opinion from general counsel.
All right, fair enough.
All right.
Any other debate? Okay, Raj, you have 2 minutes final privilege.
Yeah, please table it, don't fail it. I kind of like what I'm hearing. There is consensus, like the idea, it's there. Some rough edges here and there, there's legal issues to iron out. I will say, this doesn't necessarily obligate all undergrad students to be a part of the union. This is ideal, this is like a government thing to help represent them. No one's necessarily being forced into a union, I will add that. Or is being necessarily bargained directly for. But yeah, I get the concerns. We should double check general counsel and we'll go from there. Yeah.
Everyone wants motions, are there any motions at this time?
I move to lay SSB 2024-1020 on the computer pending consultation with general counsel.
All right.
By unanimous consent.
Any motions at this time? Are there any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. SSB 1020, the Department of Labor Act has been tabled until the revision or the oversight of the General Counsel. We're now moving on to SSB 2020.
Yeah, 21 and 22 are both 700 codes. Correct.
We're now moving on. We're now moving on to SSB 2024, 1020, yes. Financial Transparency Act, FTA, 20 Code Revision, again, authored by Senator Rajmia. Senator Rajmia, whenever you're ready again.
Okay, so one of the most infuriating thing on budget when we were going through the hearings was that when we asked questions, they could not give us answers for what they spent the money on. Essentially, there's no paper trail for a lot of the purchases made in the executive branch, which is infuriating. And they still ask for hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the object of this bill was to leave a paper trail on what our executive secretaries and agencies are actually spending their money on. Now, there are avenues in some instances in which you can get a paper trail of public records requests. Former parliamentarian emeritus Ron Lupian got a couple of the contracts from SGP and Accent, which are public recordsable, so you can PRR them, but they aren't necessarily transmitted to the budget committee. But beyond that, I don't know how many like paper plates the executive branch buys. I don't know how many pens they buy. I don't know how many t-shirts they bought in total either. When I posed these questions during the hearings, they were like, we'll get back to you. And never got back to me. And they would either answer on the question or not. So the object of this was that I need an itemized list by the end of spring, I believe it was, that I outlined that you have to submit to the Senate so you know where the money's going. Yeah, as someone who sat on the committee, and we sat on that committee for about a week and a half and deliberated on where money's going, it was quite infuriating that we didn't have any really statistics on like usage or really where money was going. So at least this provides us a framework of knowing. Like, we were able to ask questions, which is nice, but a lot of those questions went unanswered, and a lot of them were like, we'll get back to you, we'll get back to you. And it never happened, and time went, and timelines came and went, so we had to pass them by the deadline. So just having some itemized things of where the money's going and expenditures, I think is just good bookkeeping, especially when we have $23 million. I would like to know where all $23 million spent. We know like what departments have the money. I don't know how much is being rolled over necessarily. Like I might know the total amount if I did some quick math, but I don't know how much was allocated for SGP that went over. I don't know how much of a lot of the student government projects line went over necessarily. Like stuff like that, on budget committee, we should at least know, and the Senate should know as well, and should students. So that's what the goal of this bill is. Yeah, please ask questions.
I'm going to do 5 minutes of questions and answers whenever he's ready.
Okay, so I agree this should be espoused to the budget committee and should be, yeah. Let me find the statute, because I wrote a lot of notes on this when I was reading it. So, okay, so I'm pretty confident that DocuTrack does require submission and provides an itemized list of all expenditures of these agencies that you're referring to. I believe this is already mandated. Go to DocuTrack SG. Yeah, there's. Let me find a better. Where's the? Yeah, basically, DocuTrack is a system in which all these just for the members of the committee that may not know what DocuTrack is. Basically, every organization already has to submit these things through DocuTrack, which does create an itemized list of the expenditures. So it's already created. This is also PRRable very easily. DocuTrack records are public. So, I mean, like, I agree with this bill. However, I've seen these itemized lists. They already do exist.
Is this Q&A or is this just debate?
Oh, sorry.
Point of
I rescind my
information.
last statement.
Is this DocuTrack for student organizations specifically, or it also includes the executive branch of student government?
Point of information, I missed the public hearing. Or may that question be directed to the public?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what's up?
Does the executive branch of student government have to adhere by DocuTrack guidelines?
DocuTrack guidelines.
Like the way you submit like SAR?
Parliamentarian.
Yeah, SARs are also submitted through DocuTrack for all agencies. They have, much in the same way as student organizations, they have an account on DocuTrack.
So yes, yeah. So it does already exist. So, I agree completely with this bill, but given that it does exist, this is a question? Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna rescind what I just stated because that is not prudent to Q&A. I will ask
Can I say something?
Yeah, say something. Go. Sorry.
Okay, so So they use DocuTrack, but those records aren't necessarily handed over to us. And I asked explicitly, what is this money being spent on, and it still wasn't handed over. So, and to a degree, if you read this bill, it says the itemized receipts and financial documents. It doesn't necessarily say that I need a Word document, paragraph of what you spent your money on. It sounds like the infrastructure's there, and that they can just print out the DocuTrack or just send us the DocuTrack itemized list and give it to us at the end of each spring semester and by May 1st. So it sounds like this could be done.
Yes,
And
so
it's just that if it's a PRR, the timeline of getting that is multi-week long, and that would have to be put in months or weeks before we start hearings, and necessarily that might not come in by the time we start hearings, and it might not be updated by the time we start hearings. Purchases can be made in the meantime. So in terms of updated expenditures for us making decisions on how money's going, I feel like this is still pertinent. I like that you brought up the DocuTrack thing. I would like for them to just hand it over willingly, but it sounds like they're not really doing that from my time on the budget committee.
yeah.
We're not going to move on, or any other questions at this time? No, we're not going to move to 5 minutes of debate whenever he's ready.
I think that is reasonable. I will say that this only requires them to provide their itemized receipts and financial documents in a comprehensive report twice a year, which is adequate amount of time for a PRR, if that was a concern. Because even if it's weekly, like it's twice a year, so if you're PRRing them, in which they have to hand it over already, that like it comes, like I don't see that there's going to be an issue with the timeline there, because there's so much time in between these things. And also like while I don't necessarily disagree with that sentiment that it should be handed over at the end of a semester, for example, or here it says fiscal year, I don't necessarily disagree with that. However, the majority of this bill outlines something that already exists. I would appreciate I think it would be better served to the Senate if this bill was strictly written regarding their requirement to hand over the itemized report, because the majority of this is about creating the itemized reports, enhancing transparency, to maintain itemized receipts. This is already done. So I think that this bill should fail, and that would be based on the implication that it already exists. And in 102.1, that's the sunshine laws. That's what makes them have to have these expenditures in the public eye. So it would be the implication that we're possibly overreaching on something that's already espoused in the codes. I will say I do think that this should come back, but I think that because so much of the bill includes this, that if it were resubmitted, advocating for them or requiring them to submit this at a certain timeline, that would be considered substantially different from this legislation, so it could get passed back. But so much of this bill is related to what I first mentioned, that I think this should fail, and that a separate bill constructed around the giving of these itemized receipts, mandating that, should be a separate bill, because that's only written in section 239.030 A is the only mention of when they give it, or if they give it at all. So for that reason, I think it fails based on the implication that this already exists.
So point of information, if it is failed and it's, I guess, resubmitted, clarifying that it would be using the existing infrastructure of DocuTrack, and they were just requesting a timeline of when it's given to budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
The bill would focus on the timeline and the fact that it's mandated to be given over, not that it has to be kept, because they already have these done. So we would just say that they have the itemized receipts, and the bill it could be submitted where it states something along the lines of mandating them to send it over. I'm not sure what the ruling on that would be, but I do think that is substantially different.
All right.
So for that reason, I think we should fail, and it would be able to be resubmitted, because I do think that it's not a bad idea. So I think it would be able to be submitted again, but I think it should be a separate bill.
All right. I don't have any issues with it, but just for clarification, what's the difference between failing it now and resubmitting it rather than tabling it and giving the author a chance to amend it, for example?
So I would argue that because so much of this already exists, that like sections 239.00 through 239.020 is not necessary, and that's the majority of the bill. So amendments, I don't think, are meant to fix large issues with bills like that. I think the purpose of amendment would be like to fix something that is less meaningful for the intent of the bill. Because I think the intent of this bill is two things. I think the intent is for them to keep the record, and then to distribute the record to the budget committee. So I think if one of the two intents is it fails on the implication, that it should be resubmitted, and it would be substantially different.
All right, I appreciate it. Are there any other? I also mentioned that you don't have to say point of information page or anything, so if you're saying that. Yeah, now we're gonna go into 2 minutes of final privilege.
I don't mean to sound mean, but we're reading the same bill. So most of this bill is just definitions for the most part. And the definitions, if you think on the itemized that was made by DocuTrack, it fits all these definitions. So like, though they do have this DocuTrack, I don't see like, if anything, this is more of a redundancy mechanism to make sure they have it and they don't like destroy their DocuTrack records. Second thing, when it comes to just, you can just PRR anything, that's good enough. If I PR something on May 1st, and there are purchases made after May 1st, on May 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 29th, and then they gave it back to me on the 30th. All those records for the entire month of May will not be handed over to me. So that is a major hole that I might have, and who knows, they could spend 60% of their budget in a month time frame in between. So that's like the major issue with that. The second thing is the redundancy doesn't do anything wrong in that they have to keep their respective records, and that yes, the goal of this is to have those financial documents transferred over. I think this bill accomplishes, I think we agree that these records should be handed over. I'm just saying that this bill accomplishes exactly that, and the DocuTrack simply, coincidentally, falls directly in the definitions laid out in this bill. And this bill accomplishes exactly what I think we both want, which is just those records to be coming over. So something isn't connecting right, the puzzle pieces in my head aren't connecting right, because this bill is a fairly short bill that just has a few things outlined, like, hey, these people need to have records. DocuTrack fits those records. You have to hand those DocuTrack records over. So I'm having a hard time reconciling the particular issues. Like itemized receipts, that's the DocuTrack, you just print the DocuTrack records out. On top of that, if there's a signed contract, you have to hand it over to us. DocuTrack doesn't have those giant PDF contracts, so, yeah.
Point of information. May I direct this to
Yes,
the
ma'am.
author? I think it is vital for a clarity sense that either the name DocuTrack or DocuTrack, a similar program to DocuTrack, is in this legislation. Because I don't want this to be construed that DocuTrack is not adequate, because it doesn't list out specifically that what they're using now is I think it needs to be mentioned for clarity's sake, if nothing else. And again, I think that resubmission of this, even if you just amended to say maintain itemized receipts, do you think that's appropriate for the bill? Do you think that bailing it on the clarity that there is no, let me direct this to the parliamentarian. Do you think it would be appropriate to fail based on the lack of clarity by not including the word DocuTrack would allow a resubmission of the bill to be substantially different because it now includes the specific program in which these itemized receipts must be kept?
Okay, well, would it be substantially different? Yes, it would be. You could resubmit it. I'm not convinced that the clarification for for specifically DocuTrack makes the nature of the bill unclear as it currently stands, although that's a technical question for the committee to consider.
There's also the chance that we can always move off of DocuTrack, and that would render the entire statute.
Well, that's this right here. That's or a similar structure to the itemized.
Are there any motions at this time?
I agree with the sentiments of this bill, but I want to talk further with the author of this. I move to table this, just so, because I don't have fortunate, so I move to table this bill, to speak to the author further by unanimous consent.
Okay, are there any questions? Seeing none, the motion passes. SSB 2024-1023 Financial Transparency Act has now been officially tabled. We're now moving on to SSB 2024-1024 Judicial Millennium Act Foreign Code Revision, again, authored by Senator Rajmia. Senator Rajmia, whenever you're ready. 5 minutes of presentation.
Judicial Millennium Act is actually one of my more fun bills, in my opinion. Let me get on with that. So I spoke to Chief Justice about the end of last semester and thought about having petitions posted online, because let's say there is a Supreme Court case pending. Unless you're named explicitly in said petition, the Supreme Court Justice isn't going to tell you about the case, and it could potentially affect you, depending on the litigation. So it's basically, unless you're actively in contact with the Supreme Court Justice or with the person who's trying to sue something that it would affect you, you're not going to know about the case. There's no transparency whatsoever. And I spoke to them about, hey, can we post petitions online, which are basically petitions to the court, if you don't know, saying, hey, I think this is wrong, and I would like this requested relief, which is basically a court case. So post that online and have any FERPA information redacted, so UFID, potentially where you live, is redacted and in line with FERPA. So like, hey, the court posts this and anyone can also file a petition accordingly. So if there's a case that you feel you have an opinion on, you can file a case respectively. So for example, apportionment, like the case, like if someone filed a petition to be posted online and you're like, hey, I don't like that petition, I want to file a counter petition, you can do so. Basically, any petition filed, you will not know unless you're naming explicitly that you can file a counter petition, and this is what this is supposed to be helping, in transparency of the court. Because once the petitions have been submitted and once the case gets underway, you won't know until the opinion the court's made. So like, the judicial branch has been very secretive, and this just puts in light. I spoke to the Chief Justice before she resigned. She was very receptive to this. She just wanted to have a mechanism established, and so she added me to an email chain with student government advising about how we can go about posting online, and we came to like, when FERPA got, the FERPA protections have to be there. So UFIDs cannot be posted there because it's illegal to do so, so that has to be redacted. And yeah. Please ask questions. There's also adds visually recording court proceedings, deliberations, and decisions, similar to how this meeting is being recorded and Senate meetings are recorded. It makes it so Supreme Court cases must also be recorded and posted. So this is really just a transparency document for the Supreme Court. So yeah.
Can we rest your time?
Yeah.
We're now 5 minutes left. Q&A whenever you're ready.
So this is like, what is this, like the third Supreme Court related bill we've heard? And the first one, I think we were generally okay with because of like the kind of, I guess not vague wording, but you know, whatever. And we rejected another one because of forceful wording.
Yeah.
Does this not also kind of fall in the same thing where you're forcibly like telling the Supreme Court to do something, whereas earlier we were kind of like, we can't do that?
So when it comes to being forceful, you have to be very careful on what we're forcing, right? So I spoke to the Chief Justice, and they seemed fine with establishing this. This is just so they have transparency. Like, by what instrument can the Supreme Court post these petitions themselves? There's not really much that they can do. They can't really do this without help of the other branch to establish it. If it were, you must post these petitions in this specific format with this, this, and this, I would be more to akin of an overreach of the legislative branch, but it isn't. It's simply that it has to be posted, and so does cases. I don't see that as an overreach. I see that just something as transparency. It's in the gray area, I will say. If the issue is about, for this specific bill, about being forceful and mandating the court to do something as an overreach, I find it odd that a prior Chief Justice would be okay with something like this. I think we could pass out this committee, go back to the Supreme Court and make sure that they're okay with it, or we could even litigate this if this was passed to make sure. If it's unconstitutional, we could either ask the court again, or we can simply just litigate about it. I don't think it's unconstitutional or an overreach. If it was something like saying the Supreme Court has to do this, this, and under the sun, I would agree, but I don't think this is an overreach.
My thing is sort of just like going off the precedent that we've already established during this meeting, where it's like shall be required, seem like something that we're not okay with, whereas something like may, I think we're all like, yeah, go for it.
Okay, well, if it's about the...
I don't know if that's the consensus of it.
If that's a consensus, then we can change the...
We can talk about that.
If that's a consensus, we can change the wording about it.
Before you do that, Public Karen, did you want to?
Right, a clarifying note on the constitutionality criteria, which you very well and correctly pointed out. Something that is different about this case is that the previous binding language that was used in the last bill that had to do with the procedures of the Supreme Court could have been understood to have, overstepped because of the Supreme Court's autonomy in deciding their own rules. What makes this different is that it also has to do with other students' right to petition the Supreme Court. And the Judiciary Committee should try to consider how those two different rights conflict. The point of the Supreme Court being able to establish its own procedures is for students to be able to bring things to the Supreme Court, but without information, students cannot. And at this juncture, I would say that when two constitutional provisions conflict as far as the 5 criteria is concerned, the more specific condition has to apply. And it's up to the Judiciary Committee to decide whether or not it is more specific for the Supreme Court to have its autonomy over its rules, or whether or not it's more specific for students to have the right to the information so that they can present things to the Supreme Court. I hope that helps.
Thank you. We're going to continue back into Q&A.
I have one question just on 404.022. The last sentence dictating at least some of the contents of the posting, I think should be looked at by all members of the committee, because while the first section doesn't necessarily require the Supreme Court to do anything within the posting, this one does. I think it's important to look at that as well. Do you think that differs in its reach, Senator Mia?
Different sentence reach.
Yeah.
I think any reasonable person can make a brief description at hand and of the justice participating. Like, I don't think naming the justice is an overreach, nor the date. A brief description at the matter at hand, saying UFSG versus MIA could be a brief description. No one's saying you must write me a 3-page paper on what this is about. If you're truly concerned, I'm not all opposed at striking a brief description. I mean, I feel like it's at least needed to have a title, having the title of the recording. I mean, if we can't have titles of it, I'm just going to be looking through dates saying, I don't know when this case was, like, right? I mean, right? I don't see how that would be too much of an overreach.
2 more questions really quickly.
Yeah.
About the time frames set out. So, are there any exceptions that we should list, in your opinion, related to like religious holidays, or perhaps not being during the academic calendar? I think that might be a reasonable exception to add to amend it.
I mean, sure. Religious holidays, of course. I will add, the Supreme Court only sits during spring and fall semesters. They don't sit in the summer, nor do they sit during breaks at all. They will not take a case. So I don't think we have to consider that potentially. Furthermore, the Supreme Court's likely not to hear a case on any really break, like spring break either. They just simply won't take cases. A lot of them are out for the summer as well as breaks. 72 hours is really just to get through the weekend. Yeah.
We are now going to move into debate. Debate.
Just wanted to ask, I guess, I'm sure you kind of cleared up, does anyone have any thoughts on the constitutionality thing that I brought up?
It's tricky because I think that students should be able to see when there is a petition against them, be able to submit a counter petition. I'm not sure how I lean on whether or not this is an overreach in the judicial body of UF. I'm frankly not super clear on if this would infringe. They're right, it's a gray area. So
I feel like what the parliamentarian was saying is that it seemingly does infringe on one constitutional principle, but we're conflicting with another one, so it's kind of up to us to decide which one we think is pressing the other. Just kind of a crazy thing to do for this committee.
do you guys have any thoughts?
I mean, I understand the concern with like the wording of having the Supreme Court do things like outlining exact requirements to be covered in enforcement. the intent behind it is really important, I feel like. So,
I agree, but intent is not one of the 5 categories that we're going to judge.
I think it's valid to consider intent. It's definitely, because that dictates kind of whether or not it's an overreach. If the intent of this bill was to mandate specifically what they have to do versus if the intent is to just make them include the names, I think intent does matter in this case. Point of it.
I do want to turn on this one. I do agree with the whole issue of the conflicting of what we think is priority in this scenario. If that is the case, maybe table it. I would like to see what the rest or other senators would think on this bill. Again, it is relating to students' rights, so I think I would like to hear more about what other students or majority of students would think about this bill, and then make or take some action at that point. But yeah.
I do want to provide the committee with some information because I understand that the judiciary branch is a little bit hard to navigate. The way that the Supreme Court has traditionally interpreted laws is that they defer to the legislature's intent behind why that law was written. Now, of course, it's really hard for the judicial branch to discern what was going on in the minds of the senators who wrote bills. So in the past, if you take a look at, for example, some of the 700 codes, there are subsections that clarify the legislative intent of that section that was written. The Judiciary Committee, as a precaution, could, and I won't suggest whether or not it should, but it could amend the legislation to clarify the legislative intent so that if the bill were to pass and so that if the bill were to be reviewed by the Supreme Court for constitutionality, then they would be able to review it based on the intent of the legislature so that it wouldn't conflict with the constitutional provisions of the Supreme Court's autonomy over its own rules.
Thank you.
We're
Alright.
still in debate, by the way.
Yeah. This is complicated.
I also don't think that we have to make decisions necessarily like this. Yes.
Yeah, okay. If you look at chapter 403, it lays out what the Supreme Court clerk is, and it explicitly mandates its duties, maintains pleadings, opinions, orders, correspondence, and materials of the Supreme Court. If 403.23, transmit within 3 school days after receipt of an order, opinion, or decision of the Supreme Court that interprets constitutional provision, statute, blah, blah, blah. Basically, Chapter 403 does mandate the Supreme Court and members of the Supreme Court to do things pretty explicitly. So I don't think the wording of Chapter 404, what I'm adding, would be too much of a departure. As just like in 403, it does create a structure for the clerk of the court that has to take care of things, transmits things to the Senate President explicitly, student body treasurer, and Judiciary Committee of the Student Senate. It's actually fairly affirmative in its wording, and I'm looking at it. Chapter 403, if you want to look at it in the codes.
I feel that 403 is pretty explicit in fostering better communication among the 3 branches of student government. I don't really know if that applies in this case, because this is a bill about better communication with the student body. And the student body is not technically not one of the 3 branches.
I don't want to keep tabling things because we're tabled a lot, but at the same time, that's a valid point to make. But also, I don't necessarily think this is an overreach, but I don't know, and I'm not sure. I just don't want to.
I just feel that if it's true that the Supreme Court justices have previously been amenable to this bill, why not broach it with the new Chief Justice? And if they're gonna be amenable towards it anyway, does it really hurt to change the wording to be less forceful?
Point of information, could someone please point out the code to me in which it says the Supreme Court cannot do things unless they have been codified by the Senate?
Well, that wouldn't be, I'll let you know. So the Supreme Court under, I believe it's Article 5 of the Constitution, I'm going to try to cite it more specifically in just a moment, says that it can only interpret things that which is already either a part of the Constitution or is a law written under the Constitution, because you can't have unconstitutional laws. The part of, and so that's how the Supreme Court takes cases that have to do with interpreting other laws and aspects of the Constitution. The Supreme Court can order the student body or any officer of the student body to do things in the event that there is an unlawful act that's being performed, which is why the Supreme Court needs to interpret whether or not something is lawful, and whether or not it is not actively doing something which they have to do under the law. So the Supreme Court, your question was, where does it say that the Supreme Court cannot do what?
Where the Supreme Court cannot do things of their own accord that have not been laid out in the Constitution or the laws underneath it.
To be, so earlier it stated that, talking to the previous Chief Justice, I assume, Vanderbilt, that they said that they couldn't do this unless given the legislative mechanism to do so. Where is that stated that without the Senate legislating this bill, like legislating them to allow to post these petitions, that they can't just do it?
There is a Supreme Court opinion in Volume 3. It is Students, I think it's Tribunals, Application of Federal Law. Here it is. It is in Volume 3, page 16 of the PDF. You can access it through the SU website. The title is UF Student Tribunals and UF Student Committees Application of States and Federal Law. If you go into I believe it is Section B of that opinion, it says here, and I will read it verbatim, petitioners invite us to expand the power of the court, enabling review of proposed legislation which fails in committee. We decline their invitation. The University of Florida student government derives its power from the Constitution. This is not a power which can be found or logically derived from the authority granted to the judicial branch by the Constitution. The court's power is limited to reviewing laws and the Constitution. In order to be law, proposed legislation must first make it through a committee and then be approved by the full student senate and then be signed into law by the student body president. It is only then that this court may have jurisdiction for review.
Okay.
That makes sense.
I don't know. We all want to know.
All right. It's very fair. Sorry. All right. So I don't think this should fail. I'm not sure if you guys think it's appropriate to pass right now.
I say table, yeah.
Like I feel bad tabling all of these things, but
Consultation with this noted, yes.
It's not, we're not in a stable position.
we're the decisionary body is the thing.
Correct, but I do believe that we can take a step back and ask them, look at other sources and come back to us.
You guys want to move the table here? Yeah.
At this rate, you guys are gonna have another meeting with 100 bills, if we keep tabling stuff, I will say that.
Point of information, who would be hesitant to figure out whether it's
Advisors, Supreme
Your
Court.
advisors.
I say we table it and make a commitment not to do this to too many bills in the future.
Alright, meeting now over. Moving into 2 minutes of final privilege.
Ultimately, this is a Judiciary Committee, you guys have the prerogative of tabling and doing whatever you want. I will say, unless the Supreme Court is meeting, it's probably gonna be hard to get a hold of them. We can do it via email, but communication times might be slow. So depending on how this gets drawn out, this might be next month at the earliest. You can see this get passed. Depends on responding time. I know we just had a Chief Justice that we're about to approve. That's gonna take until Tuesday. Then they're gonna have to get their stuff together, so there's that. I will say, judging by this, I think it is reasonable to assume that we could just pass it here. Again, we have second readings for a reason, and first reading, so in theory, if we pass it to committee now, plus 2 weeks, we could be emailing the Chief Justice while we're at it, and if it comes back, we hate it, we kill it in second readings, or even first reading by that point. I think there is, based on parliamentary interpretation in Chapter 403, this can be passed reasonably. I understand the viewpoint of the student body isn't the same as intergovernment communication, but I think the principal stance of that this is mandating a certain form of communication, and that is mandating the court to do something similar to how 404 is doing it. So if, with the logic proposed that if 404 is not constitutional, then Chapter 403, in my viewpoint, is also unconstitutional. Seeing how this has been long-standing since 1995, I think the latter of 404 and 403 being green-lit is okay. We can also make amendments in first reading, and if it came back at second readings that it needs some minor amendments, we can amend it then and send it back to first readings, and then pass it in second readings, and then have it go into law. So we have options of the way we can do this. Keeping it in this committee, I think, will just reduce the likelihood of anything getting passed, in my opinion. Yeah.
Is there no scenario in which we could reword this legislation to where it isn't put into?
It's worded no. If we presume that this authority is granted to us. I move to open the floor for debate for two.
Just going off of my previous precedent, I like to not influence deliberations if I can't help it. I'd like to hear what he has to say first, and then I'll let you know.
Point of information, am I allowed to extend debate? I know we decided earlier that we couldn't suspend debate. Can we extend it, or does that fall under the same? Because I'd have to suspend the rules, and if we couldn't suspend the rules earlier, then it would be unwise to suspend them now.
Well, I think that you are correct to point that out. I do not believe that you can extend debate. What we can do, an alternative, is that you can call a recess debate then, and then notify the committee during after you end the recess to say, okay, this is the opinion that we have now, and then proceed with that information.
I'm amenable to passing this. So, yep. I do want it to include extenuating circumstances, including but not limited to religious holidays. So I'm going to make that amendment. Are you amenable to that?
Say the amendment again?
Following 404. Yeah. Is there any way you could specify the intent for it to be included in the record and later added to the bill?
Do you want me to
let me
write something right now, or?
If you could, I'm going to make one amendment of my own. If it's after the it's within 24 hours I received by the Chief Justice. I'm going to say after that, if it's amenable to you, excluding religious holidays or other extenuating circumstances. Yeah. Okay, so I move to. Yeah, I'd have to make it now. Yeah. Okay, I move to amend SSB 2024-1024 in section 404.01 after the words Chief Justice to say excluding extenuating circumstances, including but not limited to religious holidays. By unanimous consent.
Are there any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. Are there any other motions at this time?
Interesting wording. The intent of this bill is so that the judicial branch can allow for students to be able to counter-petition. How do you word this? What are we trying? What do you want out of my intent here? Just like
clarifying that this is not mandating the content aside from the general format. It does not mandate the content of the postings described in the document. Rather, it requires there to be a posting through the same format online, so that students are aware of it.
Yeah, so the intent of the Student Senate bill is so that students are aware of pending court cases. This bill is not to be construed as mandating the inclusion of specific content
within the postings. Yeah.
All right.
I'm
just like passing it with the caveat that the intent will have to maybe be workshopped first.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it could, yeah.
yeah, we can do amendment, I can submit amendment before we get to the floor on first reading.
Okay. So I move to amend, SSB 2024-1024 to include the intent affirmation described by the author, Senator Mia, that was previously indicated in this recording by unanimous consent.
Are there any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. Are there any motions on the objection?
I move to pass SSB 2024-1024 by unanimous consent.
Are there any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. SSB 2024-1024, the Judicial Millennium Act has now been approved. We're now moving on to SSB 2024-1025, the Sinclair Act, 300 Code Division, again, authored by Senator Raj Mia. Senator Raj Mia, whenever you're ready.
I move to recess
Oh, thank God.
for 10 minutes by unanimous consent.
All right, is there any objections? Seeing none, that motion passes. We are now going to reconvene at 3:35 p.m.